Jake Martin stepped into the polished marble lobby of Crestwood condominiums, with a cardboard box in one hand and a key fob in the other. The place was quiet, eerily so. Everything was gleaming. Chrome elevators, crystal light fixtures, even the artificial ficus trees in the corners looked freshly dusted. It was upscale, peaceful, and a little too perfect. But for Jake, it was a much-needed upgrade from the cramped downtown studio he'd just left behind. His friend Alex had offered him the rental when he moved overseas for work. The HOA's strict, Alex had warned. But it's a good building. You'll be fine if you keep your head down. Jake didn't think much of it. Rules didn't bother him. He worked remotely as a designer, didn't throw parties, and mostly kept to himself. Ideal tenant material. What could go wrong? That question was answered by the clacking sound of heels approaching across the marble. "You're new," came a clipped, nasal voice. Jake turned around. She was in her 60s, tall, wearing a pale beige cardigan, draped like armor over her shoulders, and holding a clipboard like a sword. Her name tag, yes, a literal name tag, read Marlene Foster, HOA Vice President. "I'm Jake, just moved in. Unit 4B, he said, extending a polite hand. Marlene ignored it, her eyes scanning him like a TSA agent. "Are you the owner of 4B? "No, I'm renting from a friend. Alex Jordan." "Tenants," she said flatly, cutting him off. "You'll want to review the HOA's Rules and Responsibilities Handbook. It's extensive. Certain privileges are for owners only." Jake blinked. "Like what?" "Access to gym reservations, rooftop events, storage units, and deliveries." Her eyes narrowed. "The package area is a common area, and the board has not authorized tenant access privileges." Jake laughed lightly, thinking it was a joke. "Wait, you're saying I can't get packages delivered here?" Marlene's expression didn't change. "That's correct. If you need something, have it delivered to a pickup locker, or ask your landlord to handle it. That's kind of absurd." What's absurd is tenants thinking they're entitled to the same rights as people who actually invest in this property. Jake bit his tongue. He wasn't here to argue, yet something about her tone made his stomach twist. "Right, I'll be sure to read the handbook," he muttered, pushing the elevator button. As the doors closed, Marlene stared at him without blinking. Jake felt it, even with his back turned. The next day, Jake ordered a monitor for his home office. Delivery was confirmed for the afternoon. When he went down to the lobby that evening, there was no box. Nothing. Not even a "sorry we missed you" tag. Strange. He checked the tracking info. Delivered at 2:13 p.m. Left with front desk. There was no front desk. The concierge desk hadn't been staffed since the building went fully digital 6 months ago. Jake knew that, which meant someone else must have taken the delivery. He checked again. No neighbors were around. The box was gone. He texted Alex. "Jake, hey, do you know if there's a weird system here for deliveries?" "Alex, you mean other than Marlene hoarding power? Like it's Game of Thrones?" "Nah. It should just be dropped in the lobby." Jake stared at the message. Something wasn't right. The next day, a second package vanished, and so did any illusion that this was just a coincidence. By the time Jake's third package disappeared, he stopped blaming coincidence. It had been a week since he moved in, and instead of settling into a quiet routine, he found himself checking the lobby like a hawk, heart pounding every time he walked past the mailboxes. 2-day shipping wasn't the problem. His items were being marked as delivered, but when he arrived to retrieve them, the packages were nowhere in sight. At first, he tried to be reasonable. He contacted Amazon, then UPS, both confirmed items had been dropped off in the lobby, just like every other residence. There was no concierge, no locker system, no doorman, just a hallway with a small bench and a sign that read, "Please retrieve packages promptly. HOA is not responsible for lost items." Jake knocked on a few doors in his hallway. Most were polite but vague. "Yeah, sometimes stuff gets delayed," said an older woman in 4D, her voice hesitant, eyes darting down the hall like she was afraid to say more. A guy from 3A, who looked like he hadn't slept in 2 weeks, gave a weak shrug. "I just ship to my office now, it's easier." Priya from 5C was the only one who spoke plainly. "Oh, it's Mylene," she said bluntly, arms crossed over a laundry basket. "She plays gatekeeper. If you're not on her golden list, your packages might get lost. Happened to me when I first moved in too. She thinks she runs the whole damn place." Jake frowned. "But that's illegal, right? She can't just take stuff." Priya gave a tight, humorless smile. "Not technically. She doesn't open them, probably. But if you're not an owner, she thinks you're beneath her. Some people let it slide to avoid trouble." Jake didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened. Letting it slide had never been his style. Later that night, Jake sat at his kitchen island, laptop open, typing the words HOA abusive power into a search bar. What he found both reassured and unsettled him. There were entire forums, Reddit threads, complaint boards, even YouTube channels dedicated to exposing power-hungry HOA officers. Stories eerily similar to his own. He leaned back, staring at his reflection in the window. This wasn't just petty. It was calculated. A notification popped up on his screen. "Your item has been delivered." Stood up fast. It was the USB-C hub he'd ordered 3 days ago. Jake bolted for the elevator, riding down to the lobby with a growing sense of dread. As he turned the corner, his breath caught. Empty. Not even a single padded envelope. Just silence. A tiny red light blinked from the fire alarm in the corner. He stood there a minute, as if the package might magically appear behind the ficus. It didn't. The next morning, he walked out early to grab coffee and spotted Marlene standing in front of the HOA bulletin board, taping up yet another printout titled, "Notice: Non-owners are not entitled to building privileges." A paragraph below in bold detailed, "Recent incidents involving unauthorized tenants accessing common areas." Jake paused at the exit, eyes locking with hers. She smiled. Thin. "Cold, you know," she said without looking away. "It's important to keep our community secure. Not everyone understands the standards we maintain here." Jake didn't respond. He didn't need to. The blood humming in his ears told him what came next. Marlene was trying to bully him out, and she was using packages as her first shot. That night, he decided to play her game, but on his terms. Jake didn't sleep much that night. His thoughts ran in tight, relentless circles. 3 packages, all marked delivered, all missing, and that smug look on Marlene's face when she posted the non-owner bulletin, like she'd already won some invisible game. But she hadn't accounted for one thing. Jake wasn't just a renter. He was a problem solver by trade. As a UX designer, his job was to map systems, find bugs, and outthink flawed processes. And right now, the HOA vice president was the biggest bug in his new environment. He opened a drawer and pulled out a small black box, his portable Wise Cam. He had originally bought it to monitor his front door in his last apartment. Tiny, discreet, and motion sensitive, it could upload short video clips directly to the cloud. Jake hadn't even unpacked it yet. He smirked. Time for some user testing, Marlene. The next morning, Jake waited until the building was quiet, around 10:15 a.m., when most residents were either at work or hiding behind their smart thermostats. He stepped into the lobby with a backpack and a plan. He'd already tested the camera's field of view the night before using his phone. Now, he positioned it carefully, nestled behind a large potted ficus tree, facing the corner where packages were usually dropped off. The planter was tall enough to keep the camera out of sight, but short enough not to block the lens. He'd zip-tied the base to a lower branch and angled it perfectly. The moment motion was detected in that zone, it would start recording and upload the clip to a secure folder. Jake patted the ficus like a co-conspirator. Do your thing. Back upstairs, he placed an order for a new laptop stand on Amazon. He paid for same-day delivery, making sure it would arrive between 2 noon and 4 p.m. The sweet spot. Then he waited. 18 p.m. His phone vibrated. Motion detected. Wise cam. Ficus cam. Jake's pulse spiked. He opened the app, heart thudding in his chest. A courier stepped into frame. Brown uniform. Standard box in hand. He set it down on the lobby bench and took a quick photo before turning to leave. Jake watched intently. 10 seconds passed. Then 30. Nothing. Just as he was about to lower the phone, the camera triggered again. Motion detected. Marlene walked into frame like she owned the floor. Clipboard under her arm. Hair in its usual stiff halo. Mouth pursed tight. Her eyes swept the lobby, then zeroed in on the box. She stopped, looked around, then she bent down and picked it up. Jake leaned in closer. Marlene cradled the package under her arm, glanced once more at the hallway, and turned, not toward the elevators, but toward the maintenance room door, where residents weren't allowed. She pulled a key from her pocket, unlocked the door, slipped inside with the box. The door closed behind her. Jake stared at the frozen frame of her disappearing into the room, his hands clenched into fists. It wasn't a theory anymore. It wasn't paranoia. It was proof. And Marlene had just walked into her own trap. He downloaded the footage, copied it to 2 separate drives, and uploaded a version to cloud storage. He'd watched enough true crime documentaries to know you never keep evidence in only one place. Now he had to decide what to do next. He could confront her, or he could take this higher. Public. After all, how many other tenants had gone through the same thing? Too afraid or too exhausted to fight? Jake smiled grimly. Time to shake the hive. Jake stared at the footage again the next morning, making sure he wasn't imagining it. Frame by frame, it was crystal clear. Marlene scanning the lobby, snatching the box, and disappearing into a locked utility room she wasn't supposed to be using. He had her, dead to rights. Still, Jake knew better than to go in guns blazing. He wasn't just dealing with a petty thief. He was dealing with someone who had power, reputation, and a clipboard full of technicalities. He needed to be strategic, so he did what any smart tenant would do. He made copies. One flash drive he kept in a portable case under his bed. One he slipped to Priya upstairs. Another he mailed to himself. Registered mail, time-stamped, unopened. And finally, he uploaded the footage to a Google Drive folder and set the permissions to view only for a few select recipients. Then, he drafted an email. Subject: Evidence of package tampering and HOA misconduct. Urgent. Catch HOA board members CC. Crestwood Tenants Group. Anonymous BCC. Hello. This video, recorded on the afternoon of June 3rd, shows Vice President Marlene Foster removing a tenant's package, mine, from the shared lobby area and storing it in a locked maintenance room. I'm not the only tenant who has experienced repeated package thefts or interference. This incident raises serious questions about Marlene's abuse of authority and access to HOA-controlled spaces. Link to video footage, timestamped. Google Drive. Link. Please consider this a formal complaint. I'm prepared to take this to the postal inspector and file a police report if the HOA fails to address the issue transparently. Regards, Jake Martin Unit, 4BH. He hit send. Then he waited. By the next morning, the building buzzed like a hornet's nest. Jake hadn't anticipated how quickly word would spread. He walked past neighbors, whispering in the hall, some giving him cautious nods, others wide-eyed looks of respect or disbelief. Someone had even printed screenshots from the video and taped them near the mailboxes under a sarcastic headline, Crestwood's Package Protector, caught on candid camera. By 3 p.m., he received an email from the HOA secretary, tight-lipped and formal. Mr. Martin, the board has scheduled an emergency meeting this Thursday evening at 6:30 p.m. in the common room to address the concerns raised in your complaint. Your attendance is expected. Regards, Claire Mitchell, Crestwood HOA Secretary. Jake read the message twice. His heart pounded. Not with fear, but adrenaline. Marlene was going to be there. That Thursday, the common room felt more like a courtroom. Residents filled every seat. A few stood along the walls. Some clutched printouts. Others whispered into their phones. Jake sat near the front, laptop resting on the table, thumb hovering over the play button. Marlene swept into the room 5 minutes late, wearing a powder blue pantsuit and her usual frosted lipstick. She didn't look shaken, she looked angry. I'd like to begin with a counter-complaint, she said, before anyone else could speak. This tenant, Mr. Martin, has been illegally recording in shared HOA spaces without board permission. This is a violation of community rules and potentially a privacy breach. Jake calmly opened his laptop and connected it to the room's projector. I think the footage speaks for itself. He interrupted, and then he hit play. The room went silent. 30 seconds in, gasps echoed. When the clip ended, the president of the HOA leaned forward and folded his hands. Marlene, he said slowly, can you explain this? Her face twitched, but she said nothing. Jake could feel it in the air, the shift. The building had finally seen what he had seen all along. And Marlene, she wasn't going to go down without a fight. For a few glorious hours, it seemed like Jake had won. The video footage had blown the room wide open. Marlene, caught red-handed, couldn't talk her way out of it. The other board members looked shaken. Several residents even applauded Jake. After the meeting, he received nods, hushed thank yous, and one neighbor from 6A slipped him a note that read, "You did what we were all too afraid to." But victory, Jake quickly learned, wasn't the same as peace. The following morning, the building changed. First, his key fob stopped working for the gym and rooftop patio. He tried twice, before realizing the access privileges had been manually revoked. Then came the trash violation notice. Unit 4B, improper disposal of recyclables. Violation 1. Jake hadn't even taken trash out that day. Next, he got an email from the HOA reminder. Tenants must complete the updated rental occupant form for 2024B and submit it with a $75 administrative fee. Failure to comply may result in additional penalties. Alex had never mentioned any form or fee, and Jake had combed the bylaws. It wasn't in there. He recognized what was happening. Marlene had been cornered, and now she was lashing out like a bureaucratic banshee. using every petty regulation in her arsenal to wear him down. Jake tried to stay calm. He emailed Alex, forwarded the notices, and documented everything. Still, each day brought something new. The following week, the building Wi-Fi portal randomly blacklisted his MAC address. Then, the elevator mysteriously skipped the 4th floor for 2 straight days. Jake paced his unit one evening, chewing the inside of his cheek, staring at a yellow slip stuck to his door. Notice of excessive noise complaint. Multiple reports. He lived alone. No music. No guests. No TV louder than a whisper. It was a fabricated charge. Pure harassment. He snapped a photo of the notice, timestamped it, and emailed it to the HOA board again, CCing Alex and adding a subject line in all caps, retaliation. From HOA VP, formal request for investigation. He didn't expect a response, but what came next was worse. 2 nights later, Jake returned from a walk and noticed his door slightly ajar. His heart dropped. He hadn't left it unlocked. He was sure of it. He stepped inside slowly. Nothing looked stolen. No mess. No broken glass. But a few things were off. The drawer where he kept his mail had been pulled open. A kitchen cabinet was slightly ajar. His router had been unplugged. Someone had been in here. Jake backed out of the apartment, closed the door, and called the police. They arrived 20 minutes later, took a basic report, but found no signs of forced entry. Could have been a maintenance worker with a spare key. One officer said, clearly skeptical. You sure you didn't leave the door unlocked? Jake didn't argue, but he saw the way they glanced at each other. They didn't believe him. The next day, a plain white envelope appeared under his door. No address. No return name. Inside was a single typed message. You made this harder than it needed to be. Leave. And it stops. Jake stared at the note, fingers trembling. No signature. No proof. But he knew exactly who had sent it. And suddenly, the missing packages seemed like child's play. The gloves were off. Now it was war. Jake sat in the darkened corner of his apartment, the anonymous threat still clutched in his hand. He read it again, slowly, letting the words settle deep into his bones. You made this harder than it needed to be. Leave, and it stops. The calm he'd worked so hard to maintain cracked like glass. He wasn't just dealing with a bitter HOA tyrant anymore. This had crossed a line. Marlene had made it personal. Now it was Jake's turn. He started with the United States Postal Inspection Service, the federal law enforcement agency responsible for mail theft. It took him less than 5 minutes to file the report online. He attached screenshots of the delivery confirmations, the footage of Marlene taking the package, and a scanned copy of the threatening note. Next came a call to the State Attorney General's office to file a complaint about HOA misconduct and harassment. Jake detailed every retaliatory notice, revoked privilege, and fabricated charge. Then he submitted copies of the emails, the noise complaint, even the Wi-Fi lockout logs from his ISP, and finally, he reached out to a local news station. He'd seen one of their consumer advocacy reporters run a segment just the week before. HOA horror stories. When power goes too far. Jake packaged his story in a clean professional email, attaching the video link, a timeline of events, and the anonymous letter. Then he added a single sentence at the end. I think the public would be very interested in how Crestwood HOA handles tenants who speak up. He hit send. Then he waited. The next 72 hours were a storm. First, a USPS inspector left him a voicemail requesting a callback. By the end of the day, he had a case number. 2 days after that, an investigator showed up in person to collect a statement. Then came an email. From the HOA president, Mr. Brandt, this time unusually polite. Mr. Martin, please know that the HOA board takes these allegations very seriously. We are cooperating fully with external investigations and will place Ms. Foster on administrative leave pending further review. Jake reread it 3 times. Marlene, suspended. But the real blow came the following week, when he turned on the TV one evening and nearly dropped his bowl of noodles. There she was, Marlene Foster. Her frosted hair and pearl earrings filled the screen. A still from the security footage froze behind her in dramatic slow motion. A tenant in a luxury condo building claims this HOA vice president stole packages, retaliated with illegal notices, and even accessed his unit without permission. Tonight, he says he has proof. The reporter's voice dripped with suspense. Jake's phone buzzed non-stop for the next 2 hours, but the moment of vindication came the next morning. He opened his door to find 2 men in navy blue windbreakers standing. In the hall, one of them held up a badge. Mr. Martin, Postal Inspector Garza, we'd like to ask you a few follow-up questions and take another look at the maintenance room you mentioned. Jake blinked. Of course. Come in. He led them down the hall. They requested a key to the maintenance room from building security. The guard looked spooked. He fumbled the keys before unlocking the door. Inside were shelves of cleaning supplies, tools, and tucked under a plastic tarp in the corner, a box labeled Jake M. Jake pointed. Garza lifted it slowly, examining the label. He nodded to his partner. Chain of custody begins now. It wasn't just about stolen mail anymore. Now it was evidence, and Jake could feel the walls finally closing in on Marlene. She'd spent years policing the residents of Crestwood, like a dictator, but she'd made one mistake. She picked the wrong tenant to mess with. Jake thought it was finally over. With the postal inspectors involved, national attention swirling, and Marlene placed on administrative leave, he figured she'd lay low, maybe even resign quietly, disappear, and let the whole thing fade away into HOA infamy. But he underestimated how deep Marlene's need for control really ran. Because 2 days later, she showed up at his door. Jake had just come back from a short grocery run. His arms were full of bags when he noticed the shadow under his door. 2 shoes, unmoving. He paused, slowly stepped forward, and then came the knock. 3 quick raps, sharp, familiar. He opened the door a crack and stared. There she stood, Marlene Foster, hair flawless, lipstick blood red instead of her usual frost. Her hands clutched a manila envelope, her eyes wild, not broken, not sorry, calculating. Jake didn't open the door further. You shouldn't be here, he said flatly. I came to warn you, she whispered. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but something else, rage restrained behind a curtain of civility. Jake blinked. Warn me? You mean like your last little note? Marlene took a breath and shoved the envelope forward through the gap in the door. I don't want this to escalate, she said. You've made things difficult. You think you're righteous, but you don't understand the real game here. Jake narrowed his eyes. What game? She leaned closer. I wasn't the only one taking packages. You think you're dealing with petty HOA revenge. You're not. You've stepped on something bigger. Jake stiffened. What are you talking about? But Marlene didn't answer. She turned and walked briskly down the hall before he could stop her. Jake looked down at the envelope. No name, no writing. Inside he found a single photograph and a USB drive. The photo showed a different resident, Mr. Dupree from 7C, accepting a delivery late at night. Odd thing was, the package bore Jake's name. Jake had never received it. and the timestamp showed it had been delivered 3 weeks ago. The USB drive contained security footage. Clearly not from Jake's hidden camera. These were official feeds. Lobby, elevator, even the mailroom. Angles only accessible through building management. And the videos told a new story. In them, Marlene appeared a few times, but so did others. Other board members, the building manager, even the friendly doorman, Steve. At 2 a.m., people were quietly moving packages in and out of the building. Not just Jake's, dozens. Jake's blood went cold. This wasn't just about HOA overreach. There was a whole network involved. Reselling, high-value packages, rerouting deliveries, even switching labels before residents could retrieve them. His packages? Just collateral. Marlene wasn't the ringleader. She was the fall person. Jake sat down, the weight of it pressing hard into his chest. That smug woman who had terrorized him might actually be trying to save herself, and he'd just sent federal agents after her, while the real culprits were still watching, still hiding. The email came less than 10 minutes later. No name, no subject. You should have stopped while you could. You've been looking in the wrong direction, and now we're looking at you. Jake read it 3 times. His hands beginning to shake. Someone new, someone inside the system. And now, the hunter had become the hunted. Jake barely slept that night. The footage on the USB haunted him. Not just for what it showed, but who it showed. Familiar faces. Ones he'd passed in the hallway for months, even years. People who had smiled, nodded, chatted about weather and wine pairings, now revealed as silent accomplices in an organized scheme. He stared at the anonymous email again. You should have stopped while you could. You've been looking in the wrong direction, and now we're looking at you. It wasn't a bluff. Jake knew it. This wasn't about HOA pettiness anymore. This was criminal, and if they were watching him, they'd be preparing a cover-up. Maybe worse. So he made his final move. The next morning, Jake walked into the Postal Inspection Service office with the USB drive, the photo, and a full printout of everything Marlene had passed him. He told them everything. How the footage came to him. How Marlene had shown up. The connection to other board members. The altered packages. The fake violations. Everything. Inspector Garza's calm expression slowly shifted to something more serious. This isn't just mail tampering, he said. This is conspiracy, and possibly organized fraud. You've done the right thing. Jake nodded, his pulse racing. So what happens now? Garza gave a small grim smile. Now, we bring the whole building down. The next 48 hours unfolded like a crime thriller. Agents swarmed Crestwood under the guise of routine audits. Garza posed as a delivery man to trace where packages actually ended up. A sting was set up using marked boxes. Warrants were quietly obtained. Then, early Thursday morning, the first arrest came. Jake watched from behind his blinds as 2 men in suits escorted Steve the doorman out of the building in handcuffs. A van pulled around the back entrance. Mr. Dupree from 7C was next. By noon, 2 board members, people Jake had once thought were neutral, were walked out silently, faces down, cuffed. It was surreal. And then came the moment no one saw coming. Jake received a call, not from Garza, from Marlene, block number. Raspy voice. You got what you wanted, didn't you? She said, half bitter, half amused. They finally saw the truth. Jake hesitated. You helped them. Why? A pause. Because I made a deal, she said. I turn over everything. I have. And in exchange, they looked the other way on the smaller stuff. Jake's jaw clenched. You were part of it. She didn't deny it. Yes, but not the way they were. I started skimming after they threatened to kick me off the board. They thought I was too nosy, too controlling. I figured if they were going to profit off this place, so could I. So you let me be the bait, Jake growled. I needed a scapegoat, she said softly. But you didn't fold, you fought, and for that, you ended up doing more damage to them than I ever could. Jake's stomach churned. You're no hero. Of course not, she said, laughing once. But you're safe now. And Crestwood? Won't ever be the same. She hung up. The fallout was fast and furious. An emergency board vote was held. Marlene was formally expelled. The building hired new third-party management. Federal agents continued questioning other residents. Jake? He became something of a quiet legend in the halls. Tenants he didn't even know shook his hand in the elevator. A few left him muffins and notes outside his door. But Jake didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired. One morning, weeks later, he received a certified envelope. Inside, an unsigned card. Nice job, detective. Don't trust the next HOA either. Jake chuckled bitterly, then walked to the balcony, looked out over the city, and tossed the card into the wind. Crestwood would never forget him, but Jake had already begun looking for his next apartment, far away from board meetings, bylaws, and Karens.